Ethan's office was closed for 2 weeks for COVID. Not an exposure to him.
Somebody.
Story.
Oh, they all.
Hmm. They are. Yeah. Hey,
4%.
makes it come together. How goes it?
Good. You trying to catch up to work, everything going on last week. This one go to 11 or 12 tonight.
Hopefully not that long.
I think 9 o'clock will be plenty.
We're dragging my little to bed at 5:30 in the morning. We're getting off work at 11.
Yep. I slept in all this morning. They can't go straight to these or else they have those little rat dreams, you know, where you're just like working on the same thing over and over and over again.
So it's, you know what I can't stick out there is after Hardy's baseball.
Oh, really? Are you still coaching?
Yeah, you know, I just like, I just shut it out.
That's kind of sweet.
Either you're bad, like, this guy's doing great, or, oh, that man, he, you know, I just, I think that kids, you know, make a mistake, right? You know, they take it a lot easier now.
Pretty split second decision making, they're not really accustomed to making.
Yeah,
A lot of it's gotta be just nature at this point.
you can tell when they do, you know, that's a problem. Oh.
How'd your season wrap up?
Good, it's good, we didn't win much, but I thought we had a good season.
Nice.
We knew we would, you know, just because first year, maybe. Or maybe I'll start taking them fast kids.
Nice.
Hi there.
About 2 weeks.
Hi, can you hear us?
Yep.
Okay.
I'm on the phone because the Surface doesn't work for some reason. Teams on Surface isn't working. So I'm on the phone.
Okay, that works.
That's so much work.
It is. He's got me. That's some supper.
I know.
Amanda, can you hear us? Hi, Brianna, is that you?
Hey, sorry, I can hear you.
Okay, thanks. Brianna, is that you on the phone?
It is.
Okay,
Can you hear me?
yep.
We had a couple people.
Yeah, I couldn't open it on the desktop because it's telling me I need to update it, which I did and downloaded something and it still is not opening.
Oh,
I
usually
apologize.
there's a link somewhere. It says go to the web format.
Oh, go to web format.
Yeah, if you read down a little bit,
Oh.
it says you can go to the web format.
I'll try it.
Yeah. That on speaker?
Yeah.
It's normal. less and less. Right. It's back to it.
It's like a whole different room though, because we changed it up.
It does feel like a little different.
Yeah.
I like this better. It's too bad we can't, you never know how many people are gonna show up.
Well, we're gonna try to see, the thing we're gonna try to get is a single desk. One person will have to sit at a single desk, and that way we can split the room into a B. Because when you have these 3 desks, one is not being used, but it takes up so much space, that if we can set the tables like this, then you guys can see the screen and the audience.
Just to make me sit in the middle, or you just talking?
Well, we probably may put one desk on one side with like a single desk right next to it, and then we can put one desk over here. It's like we do in land use, we can split the desks and then you can see the screen better.
Yeah.
So, but the problem is when we have 3 desks, then just the way how big they are, they have to be like that. Plus, when we have the podium.
I'm not actually complaining. It's.
No, but we'd rather have you guys see this. We like to have you guys see the screen. We've talked about it for years, and we've talked about, like in the assembly, they have a big screen in the back of the room that they look at while the audience looks at the screen.
Oh. On the list of first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll
Plus,
get,
I have a packet there, so if it's everything too bad.
someday we'll get advanced, so you guys will all have iPads and we'll just show you.
Right. I really want to get away from paper, like
Yeah.
trying to guess how many people are gonna come and whether everybody's gonna want all of it.
We throw a lot away,
I just hate it.
recycle a
Makes
lot.
me sad.
Actually, when I saw Mike pull out his laptop, I have my laptop this time too. I've got my iPad. But we were doing Zoom. I did have to do the 2 screen thing because
Correct.
yeah. It's hard to do without. I wonder how much paper was saved with everybody working at home, because I know in our office, people just like, yeah, just ran. All of them just never did that. No, I don't want to have to deal with getting more credit. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Not unless it's for my process. Then we need it.
I bet a ton of paper was saved. I bet you're right. Well, just for these meetings. Do you,
Oh, yeah, frames and reels.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Can you imagine the paper packets you would be putting together for those meetings with 100 people?
Brianna, I see you're in. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Okay, we can hear you. We're good.
Great.
Big spill plans and things. Yeah.
We're just waiting on Mike.
6 hard copies.
Okay.
Okay, spread all day long. I do not. New trees.
So far, the audio is a little better on my computer than the phone.
Okay, that's
But-
good.
We'll see.
Yeah, we're working off of this small camera.
But I do have to print out some things, and Margaret's already busted me on this, because we were talking about something, and she goes, do you have like all these stacks of paper with different color highlights? And I'm looking at it right there on the desk when she said that, I'm like, oh, shit.
See.
That's what I felt.
Oh, it's kind of like a game.
Mike?
Hello.
Hey, Larry, long time no see.
Hi, the whole time.
Come on in. Come on in.
Okay.
This is not anything,
So,
but I think I've got the numbers pretty right.
what's that?
As far as how many people we're gonna have here in person. We don't get a lot of, pedestrian traffic. on-
Pedestrian traffic on budget night. What's the first one?
That's right.
People like to see. I may not stay at home. I'm sure I don't stay at home.
We will be heartbroken.
I think he's got issues with the spectator sport.
Pardon?
Got issues with the spectator sport.
Brianna joining on Teams.
She's on Teams, Amanda's on
I'm not
Teams,
sure.
Chief Weston's on Teams, so.
Well, see, that takes all the drama.
That takes all, that just takes all the time.
So much for having a line people.
Okay, let's start. So it's GBOS budget work session 1 tonight in the community room. Girdwood Board of Supervisors, committees and subcommittees are subject to the Alaska Open Meetings Act as found in Alaska Statute 44.62.310 and Alaska Municipal Code 1.25 public meetings. Girdwood Board of Supervisors operates under the Girdwood Public Meeting Standard of Conduct. That's retired. Do the roll call, Mike Edgington, co-chair, any supervisor?
Gentleman Nerd. Guy White, fire.
And on Zoom, we have
On Teams, Brianna Sullivan, Parks and Recreation, Cemetery Supervisor.
And Amanda Sassy, Road Supervisor.
thank you. Do members of the public want to introduce themselves as well?
Larry Daniels, fire board member.
And I think we have Chief Weston. Hey there, Michelle.
Hi, Michelle. Yeah, Michelle Weston, Fire Chief.
Thank you. Any disclosures? Okay. Agenda, we're going to entertain a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
Second.
Favor, a voice, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. I'm going to forego saying the announcements out loud, just since we have a small group and particular market read them probably multiple times. Let's move straight to agenda item 1. Budget overview, Kyle.
Sure. So tonight is the beginning of the process of establishing the 22 budget. We follow the OMB guidelines as to when we're supposed to submit budgets to them, and then it goes to assembly, and the process will, will roll into the fall, and they'll set the agenda or set the budget for the start of the fiscal year, which is January 1st. And so for the Girdwood service area, we focus on the budgets for street maintenance, fire, police, and parks and rec, and cemetery. Cemetery is the newest of the 5, and as right now, it's actually in a dormant state because we haven't done much work with cemetery, but someday that could be something that comes back. But our primary ones are the street maintenance, fire, police, and parks and recreation. But also this is a chance for the board and the community to understand the tax structure for Girdwood. We are tax district 4, and under tax district 4, all our taxes are collected through property tax for the most part. There are alcohol taxes that go towards some area-wide services, but for the most part, the majority of services that are provided, especially all the services that are provided to the Girdwood area are collected through property tax. So the first thing here is the breakdown of the different property taxes. This is an assessment based on 2021. We currently right now have a mill rate of 13.59. That's the highest we've ever had for a mill rate. But that is mostly in relation to increases with school bond debt. That has been a new thing that we're taxed for this year. The areas that we do get taxed for are area-wide. This year, the mill on that was 0.05. As we know, before the last budget revisions were approved, that mill rate was supposed to be significantly high. But thanks to Mike's math and lobbying to the assembly, that all got corrected, and we're in the right area there. The Anchorage School District is 7.83 mils. That's just for the operations of the school district, the yearly operations of it. And then what's new this year is the school district bond reimbursement. This is the result of the state no longer reimbursing bond debt and putting it back to the taxpayers to pay that off. We heard last night that this could be possibly going up again. It sounded like $50 for every 100,000 assessed value of your home, unless the state can come back in their special session and rectify that. That could be going up again next year. But that is a new mill rate that we've never had before until 2021. And in the service area, where we are at 5.05 mils for that. So as you can see, the majority of our property taxes go to the school district. And just about 37% go to the Girdwood service area for the services that we fund here, which is basically all the major services: police, fire, parks and rec, street maintenance. Those are the sort of the essential services that you'll find in most governments. So it's a smaller factor compared to what the school district is. Excuse me. This is just an example of what the breakdown is. If the assessed value was like 721,000 on your home, and you can see where the different areas that you pay for in taxes. This would be without the exemption. So you had a owner occupy residence here who didn't have the exemption credit. You can see what the price is there. So as we go down, we just wanted to break down the different mill rates for the different services and how it works out between street maintenance, fire, police, and what percentages of that Girdwood service area revenue that's collected, where that goes to the different departments we have here in Girdwood. And then going down, this is just to give you more of an education about what our services pay for and how it's broken down and what they go to. So you can see the area-wide and all the different things that area-wide helps to fund. Now, area-wide has other revenue streams: bed tax, alcohol tax, tobacco tax, service fees, things like that help fund it. So in certain years, we'll see an area-wide that is actually negative. So we're getting a rebate because they've collected so many revenues in other areas. They don't need the tax, the property owners to fund area-wide services. Sometimes they give us a rebate. And so further down, there'll be an example of what the averages have been for area-wide taxes over the years. And then you can see for the school district here. One thing I didn't include here and I need to add in is the area-wide, as the school bond debt. We didn't have that last year, and this is a chart I've used in the past, so we'll add that to the next meeting. I am still trying to find a data sheet. They've had this in the past. They show a comparison of all the different tax districts across the municipality and how we rate for our mill rate against others. But in 2020, we had the 5th lowest tax rate, and we had actually probably the lowest tax levy when compared to other districts that had essential services: fire, police, parks and rec, and road maintenance. And the way our budgets are compared to those areas. So I'm still looking for that mill levy chart for 2021. It's not very apparent in the OB document, so I'll probably have to ask for it separately. So rolling down to the next page, this gives you a comparison of tax district 4, and it gives you a historical over the last 10-year average through here. As you can see, over 10 years, our average mill rate has actually, for area-wide, has been 0. We've had a lot of negative years in there, and we've had a few positive years in there, but for the most part, overall, it's been at 0. Our average mill rate for Girdwood service area has been 4.57 over 10 years, and for the school district, it's been 7.25. So currently, the school district's at 7.83, so it's not too far off from the average over the years. And then now we have this new school bond debt mill, and that will start to average in as we go forward. We'll see where that goes. You can see the comparisons. Tax District 1, that's the city downtown area, is the highest mill rate in the municipality. This year they're at 17.91. We're at 13.59. And probably our most significant increase is that school bond debt reimbursement. Over our 10-year history, we've averaged 11.9. And I'll keep in mind, over that 10-year history, we've added in police. For many years, we didn't have police. So we've added that service in, and that's been an additional into our mill rate. So as you can see, there's quite a bit of difference there between downtown and what the service area is paying out here for same services, but maybe different level of what they're getting.
It's interesting that downtown a voluntary tax, which is actually rebated if you're a residential property owner, so only the businesses pay that tax.
Oh,
But it's like a voluntary one, no tax on top.
voluntary.
Voluntary. The businesses pay it and you don't have the bonus.
So you get a breakdown here of if you have a property that's at $100,000 as to what you're going to pay at 13.59 mils, all the way up to 800,000. So you can see the different levels of taxes owed, according to our mill rate. And I gave a comparison to what that looked like in 2020, before we saw that bond mill rate come in. So you can see the different increases over time there. So that is kind of an overview. Any questions related to any of that? If not, I guess we could jump into the next one. We'll go with fire.
Okay.
Let me get this up on the screen for them.
Yeah, my apologies, but printed out smaller than small. I swear I did the same.
We can hopefully make it bigger on the screen.
Yeah, on the screen will probably be more visible with this.
Stop presenting. Good.
And this is what I sent you, right?
Yes, yep, I'm just trying to pull it up.
Okay. So preamble on this would be last year we went as part of the contract negotiation process with Anchorage Fire Department. We went through a pretty exhaustive sort of deep dive on where the department needs to move and how to fund it and what the gaps are. And so looking at that in 2000, so this is a spreadsheet that was prepared by both the Anchorage Fire Department financial officer and then went to OMB. And this is part of that $600,000 initial request. And so as you can see, as we went through the year last year, we felt that there was a increase that was needed in the fire budget of $111,278 to bring us up to a better staffing level. And then none of that was funded. For EMS, we had requested $600,000, and it had ended up being $300,000 that was at least still going through the process. If we look forward to this next year, I've highlighted areas where you'll see an increase. The increase for training amount there is, as you can scroll over to, you can see the description. That would be to have we need a firefighter 2 class. And so that would be firefighter 2 wages would be rolled into that for that class. I've increased the fuel by 1,000 for both fire and EMS. Just in recognition of fuel costs. I've kept all the other costs mostly the same. You'll see a giant jump in professional services. That is the $40,000 that we anticipate is needed to bring the fire department into compliance with NFPA on firefighter medicals. I believe you've heard a presentation on this from me before. Currently, we are out of compliance with NFPA and Alaska presumptive health legislation. So right now, if a Girdwood firefighter had cancer, they would not meet the criteria for presumptive health legislation. So the entire cancer, their medical costs would be borne by them. And so for that, I'm not suggesting that we would have to do medicals for the entire department, only the firefighter ones, which would be covered then under legislation. Then they have to have one every year for consecutive years. Quite frankly, the work with the presumptive health legislation does not benefit volunteers right now. It really benefits professional workforce. With that, Chugiak is also looking to come into compliance. And so we are both looking for a vendor to provide the service. The Anchorage vendor, the Vera contractor, said that they could take us as well, but we need the funding first. And then insurance, I just increased that $2,000. That's about the cost that we anticipate that the extra insurance level will be, which is requested by the new MOA contract or AFD contract. And so when you scroll down to the bottom, you will see a proposed budget increase request of $187,944. And then, and I also did not highlight another spot. Also, the labor cost is increasing because, again, I'm trying to fund firefighters, increase the firefighter response rate to be improved, but not the training rate. And then the other thing to know is that we are just starting the summer staffing with the improved staffing. And so we will have in the next, I would say, 2 months, a better look at what the payroll is for a month based on the new staffing standard, but we don't have that yet. So I would anticipate in 1 or 2 more pay periods, we could get a sort of perspective of what the average is per pay period on that new staffing level. Also, next year, later, probably next week, I anticipate that we'll be able to provide, we're currently updating our payroll, monthly payroll chart that you've seen before and our other graphs. So you'll be able to see sort of historical trends on costs for the fire department. And do you want also do, I know that was a lot. Do you want me to also talk about capital budget?
Maybe let's talk about operational right now, and then we can go to capital.
Okay.
A quick question for you. This is the first time I really got a chance to look at this today. And I'm looking here at this 609 compared to 372 for last year. Are you saying this is an increase here?
Yes. Yes. Let me just make sure. Yeah.
So that,
So that would be the increase for increased wages, right? Because I want to provide I want to improve the wages from $11 an hour when people go on a call to around 18 for firefighters.
okay, so this should be highlighted in yellow, right?
Yes. Apologize. Yes. And then the other thing is we are currently doing a lot of sort of deep dive analysis on the financials. And so I'll also be able to, in a couple of weeks, provide more documentation on these. And again, when we actually have a number of weeks under the belt on the summer staffing schedule, I can actually see the trend analysis of how it's going to look.
I have a question.
Okay.
Does the response staffing increase, does that include the increased salaries for captains?
Yes.
And do we have a look at what it would be like if there wasn't that? I remember the increase, well, actually, I don't know. What is the increase that you were gonna have for those captains?
Again, they're all EMT3 providers, so they're currently being brought up to the EMT3 rate, which is $21 and $22 an hour.
And that's just for the like regular paid people, not the on-call folks, right? Like volunteers.
Yeah, yes. And so engineers are getting paid a rate now when they go on calls. ALS is getting paid a rate higher when they go on calls as well. However, the firefighter ones, the EMT2s, the new members of BLS are all still getting $11 an hour when they go on a run.
Yeah, and I hear you say that in a couple weeks you'll be able to break that down a little bit more for us, and it's just such a significant increase from last year that I am interested in seeing the breakdown of the response staffing, if that's possible.
Oh yes, oh most definitely, and I'm also eagerly awaiting the payroll analysis, so we can sort of do a deep dive on this.
Great, thank you.
So Michelle, another question I had was the overall increase down below here for 2022 for fire. Does that add up with what's going on with the increases up above here? Is there a decrease somewhere because just like the increase for payroll is basically, I'm just doing actually the first line here of response staff. I think that's like a $256,000 difference there. plus.
Okay, well, you know, maybe the spreadsheet isn't adding up properly. It's supposed to be summing between non-labor and labor.
There is a decrease in the, in this stuff. 50,000.
And again, I want to sort of mention that, you know, it's hard for us, truthfully, I know we do budgets at mid-range every year. It's hard for us to predict what's going to happen, especially since we've done this staffing change. Additionally, you know, AFD hasn't signed the contract yet. So I'm assuming that 300,000 is coming in. However, the fire chief has not blessed the contract yet. So there could still be a battle of which we'll have to adjust this down. And again, adjust down the staffing level or the staffing model of the department.
Gotcha. Okay.
So I kind of feel like this is a crystal. Unfortunately, I'd like to be able to say it's exactly this number. We'll exactly have this number of calls in 2022, and we will exactly need this many hours per week for coverage. But again, it's a how many people show up on a call and all that stuff. So, you know, unfortunately, it's not as a volunteer budget is a little different than when I managed the budget at AFD, because then we had sort of, you know, a minimum operating standard. We always had the same number of people on shift every day. So it was a lot easier to budget for some of these things.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm just
that's not me complaining. I'm just saying, because when I talk in these things, I feel like I'm being like general, but it's there is sort of a general, you know, I wish I could nail it down to the dollar figure, right? Being as a very fiscally conservative person that I am. So I am looking forward to getting additional information on this. You know, this is my best at this moment in time version of it. But I believe in a couple of weeks, I'm going to have an even better version that we can nail down. Is that exactly as much, or can we decrease the amount a bit?
Okay.
I don't have a question.
Sure.
Michelle, this is Paula, and I know when we met last on the budget a couple of times, I've requested you to apply the percentages of your increases based against your 2019 or even 2018. I know 2020 was a very unusual year with all of the COVID increased staffing that you had to do. Were you able to do that? Apply those percentages?
I'll be completely honest. We're waiting for 2020 to be closed out, and I anticipate that will be done next week. And then I'd like to do it off of that and see the percentage. I know 2020 was a strange year, but I think it would be better for us to do it off of 2020. Even, you know, I might be the only person that thinks that, but I think that we should do it off of 2020 versus do it off of 2019. So, you know, because what isn't included in all of this, like I was doing the analysis the other day of, you know, what happened in 2018 versus now, looking at cost of living increases and inflation, and then inflation from the start of the year to June, and that. And so, you know, as we've gone through and had flat budgets over the years, there's no inflation rise for different things as well. So I think that it would be best if we could keep it to 2020 to 2021 versus 2019, right? So, but that, you know, that's my feeling. Not everybody feels that way.
So I know, I don't know, what is your call rate from 2020 to 2019? Because I know in the ER actually had quite a few less, up to 25% less calls, because people didn't want to call. They didn't want to leave their home. They didn't want to go to a hospital. I'm just curious what your call volume was from 2020
Correct.
versus 2019.
The call volume went down. I don't have the exact number in front of me at the moment, but the call volume did go down. But also, you know, Chief Hetrick had told us not to respond to vehicle lockouts, right? And so you got to think the other years, I feel like they had been padding some of the call volume with about 50 to 60 vehicle lockouts. Well, I can tell you it's not popular not to not do vehicle lockouts for people. And so we are kind of doing them at as needed basis. But, you know, is a vehicle lockout a real call for service, right? And so I think that when we stopped doing that, the numbers decreased a little bit too. So it wasn't all just COVID. But I agree with you. The call volume did go down a bit. So you're right. Maybe that is a bad year to look at. I just sort of feel like that's, you know, it's been kind of a moving target. But I appreciate, but Paula, I appreciate, you know, with your depth of experience in the past, looking at the fire budget, your perspective on everything.
Yeah, and then I just have one final question, because this shows that EMS staffing is less. Is that what it's saying? It's less than what it was, and I want to understand.
Now that was, so basically, this was the budget that was proposed by AFD to OMB, which included, which had a higher value. Like AFD agreed with us that we needed 600,000 increase to the budget, right? So that's why you see in that 2021, this was the proposed budget that AFD agreed with us that was put forward to OMB for 600,000 for EMS staffing, that got cut down to 300,000. You know, the whole amount that we get from EMS has been 207,500.
It's kind of clear from the way that it's laid out that that number for EMS staffing is calculated from the budget they were allocated. It's not actually a cost.
Okay.
It's more like a reallocation of the budget, of the amount that was received, because 207.
And part of that was to trying to reflect the fact of the historical, you know, EMS paying fire subsidizing EMS, right? So when we put forth the 600 number with the AFD finance person, financial officer, the whole idea was to capture those costs on the highway and other costs of EMS to actually provide an accurate number. And then the number 600,000, you know, got cut down to 300. And then, you know, now we are again debating it this year. Not us, but, you know, other people.
Okay, and then I just have one final question. I know you were also requesting 35,000 for responder physicals. Is that included in the staffing budget?
No,
or elsewhere?
So you can see that in professional services. There, you see there's an increase from 5,000 to 45,000.
Okay, sorry, I apologize. You guys aren't
I have a question, Michelle. So that's you'll have that cost every year, right? That's not a one-time increase.
No, that'll be a every year cost. And so a medical is running around 1,200 right now. That was the cost that AFD quoted me on their Vera contract. So that's what Chief Benningfield is sort of shopping around to see if we could do it cheaper. And so with that, and again, it's not all the firefighters, it's just the firefighter ones.
Chief, what we'll do before the next work session is we'll add in the IGCs to this too, so that we can show the board the overall effect, because that is also you know, the IGCs are part of our mill rate calculation. So we'll to the bottom.
Okay, yeah, and I agree with that. I just think, you know, I don't have a lot of control over IGCs, so for me, I have to look at it just, you know, without them, because I know that's a necessary evil.
Yeah, it's the aspect of what we pay for in our taxes.
Yeah.
We'll refine some of these formulas so that it's showing up at the right rate too. So.
Yeah, and I do honestly believe by the next meeting, I'll be able to, or earlier, if I get them earlier, as soon as I get the numbers, I'm going to put, you know, start sending out those graphs that I was sending out historically. As soon as I get the numbers to plug in, I'm going to send you all those so you can see kind of where we're trending and all that.
Okay.
So the way I'd summarize the numbers here are we're even with this budget, we're still subsidizing EMS from the fire department. I know We massage to look like we're not, but in practice, the staffing, I think you said was roughly equivalent between the two.
Well, what I want to see again, I want to see the perspective of the last couple of payrolls to see how it's moving a little bit. So I think that, yeah, we didn't get the 600,000. So yes, it is still funding it a little bit, but it moved it forward a little bit.
And it looks like, I mean, my guess, IGCs, this is going to be the IGCs and the 300,000 from the municipality if we get that. It's still going to bring in a mill rate of about 2.2, I think, for IGCs.
The problem, we can run a calculation on it.
Yeah, it obviously depends on the numbers. And it depends on.
And then I should mention for the training hours, right? I think I'm not to be like, oh, I'm amazing, but I think I've done a really good job this year of being able to push our firefighters into AFD classes and make them and almost get them to pay for them, so we don't actually have to. And they've been hybrid classes, so we're historically like a company officer class would be a lot very expensive. It's now just, a lot of it's online, and then there's only a few days of classroom experience, right, and testing. And then like with the fire instructor class, which is also something that the state is requiring fire instructors be on staff or available to train fire instructors. We've been able to do all the training online, and that classroom online delivery, and then only have people go in for 2 days of classroom and 1 day of testing. And AFD has been very gracious and not charged, other than I have to buy books. I haven't had to pay anything for those classes other than the testing fee and the book fee. And that's been, I think, a huge win in terms of leveraging some of the AFD resources to be able to provide training that would have normally cost us more.
Any other comments?
I do. This is Guy. If you could just help me understand, so your revised budget increase for EMS is that's that 175 and 125 that it sounds like you're going to get. The increase of 187 on the bottom there.
So for EMS, we were hoping to get an increase of 300,000, because that was what was agreed to by the former administration. It went to the assembly. However, there's a new administration. The contract is still stuck in legal. And there we sit.
Yeah.
We have assembly approvals for that 300,000. The contract just needs to be completed to release the money. So
we do, however, I don't have agreement from the Anchorage Fire Chief yet on that he will accept the past agreement or the assembly resolutions yet. Which could be just him pushing it, he just wants the opportunity to look at it more.
I think I understand that 300 easier. The 187, is that, are you worried about that, or is that?
Where's the 180? The 187 on the fire service area?
Yeah.
That's the proposed budget increase that I'm asking from the Board of Supervisors.
Okay.
I mean, that's the way to think about it. Overall, the budget's going up by just under 500,000, but 300,000 of that's coming from the municipality. This year, at least, hopefully every year. But we're looking at an extra 200,000 from taxpayers here.
And again, that's my first out of the bat number. The 40,000 for firefighter physical medical stuff, that really needs to be in there, right? I can't get out of the insurance on the non-labor stuff. I can't control the cost of fuel or operating expenses. I can't control the cost of NFPA physicals, but I know that we should have them because we're one of the few departments that don't. And, and there could be an OSHA thing with that too, but I would need to investigate that part more. And then with insurance, that's the extra $2,000 I'm anticipating is what the insurance is going to cost based on the new risk management thing from the new contract.
I mean, I think it's fairly clear what's driving that cost increase is the 80% cost increase in staffing. It's less than 80 because of the way it's shuffled around, but it's still a very significant increase in staffing costs. And that's what's driving it. So we'll be making a decision about whether that's what we want.
Yes, and again, I don't feel like I not to say like, oh, just wait, but in a couple weeks, I'll have even better figures on exactly where we are in terms of how much those payroll cycles have been costing.
Because of the added ALS that we've had.
Yes, exactly.
And generally higher wages.
Yep.
I have a quick question. Is the increase just the wage increases or is it the new staffing model?
Both.
Or is it both? It is both?
Yeah.
Plus all the other increased costs like the physicals and that.
Okay.
We could do capital while we're here. She has it on.
Okay, let me just scroll it down. Okay, so as you know, our capital needs seem to change versus what is the crisis du jour. The hose request is that we've had for this year was unexpected, right? Both for us and AFD. And so there was recognizing that there was the hose purchase that needs to happen this year. Along there, I've got turnouts, every year buying 3 sets of turnouts. A few months ago, we had a snow machine catch fire on an EMS call. We had to go, there was a hotel guest on the Nordic Trail, and they needed to be brought out. And as the snow machine got back to the Nordic Loop parking lot, it promptly caught on fire, which was impressive. Unfortunately, it was total. So you might think, wow, I was shocked at the cost of a snow machine in terms of a snow machine that will require 2 people and then has towing capacity. So I've been told that 16,000 is what I should aim for. Actually, someone told me 18, but I'm going with 16 because I think 18 is amazing. So 16,000 for the snow machine. And then utility 41, which I had desperately wanted to get replaced this next year. I pushed it to the next year. I've added in nozzle replacement. Our nozzles are 20 years old. And so I've added in a placeholder for buying 1 nozzle or, a year and maybe some other fixtures. And then I put in a placeholder for extrication tools. That's what we have that grant application in with AFD for Rescue 41. But I've got a placeholder in there in case, wow, what if we don't get that grant? We'll have to look at funding that. But I would argue that should be an area-wide cost, just like Rescue 41. And then I've got a placeholder in there for Engine 41 loan payment, and then pushing off again that other command vehicle replacement till another 2 years ahead. And then, again, the looming boat 41, still figuring out a fundraising effort for that.
The one thing that wasn't on here, and maybe it's just got missed, is the hose under here. I don't see it. So do you want me to write it in for, what was that, for 32,000?
Yeah, but hose would need to come out of this year.
Yeah, out of 2021. Okay. So the other ones can come out of 22. Okay.
Yeah, that's why I didn't, it needs to come out this year.
We're going to put that onto the next round of agendas for that to be presented.
Yeah. And then the thing with that is it's not going to be like an annual thing, right? Like it seems like we're not buying hose every year. So And then this hose, the hose that AFD has made as the new standard has a 10-year warranty on it. So it's a better quality hose. So hopefully we're not going to go through this delamination experience again.
Okay. How long have you had that hose for?
It wasn't well, some of the hose was 16 to 20 years old, but it wasn't specific to certain years. On the large diameter hose, there was certain years that were failing. There was 2 specific years that were failing. The other thing with the large diameter hose is traditionally, apparently what we've done is we've done it old school where we bought 100-foot length and then we've spent a lot of labor time cutting it down, adding stores fittings and that. It's actually cheaper and AFD prefers it. Also, if we just buy it already with the stores connection on at the right length. And so that's a switch that I'm implementing with this year.
Okay.
Okay, I think we've covered fire department as far as we can tonight. So let's move on to roads, I think. Sure.
Okay, I'm going to drop off if that's okay.
Okay.
Thanks, Michelle.
Thanks.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Bye.
Yeah.
Have fun, everybody.
Okay, so public works or roads budget. I'll start with personnel costs. We're looking at probably a 3% increase here. That has to do mostly with there's a small pay increase. Margaret's position is union, so there's a step increase every year with that. And then my position is executive, so I'm actually appointed by the mayor. And for the last 2 years, we've had no increase. And then this year they gave us a 1.2% increase. And that's sort of dictated by the Salary and Wage Commission. So, so we just sort of went with an average annual cost of living increase of 1 to 3% there. And please ignore some of the comments on the side, those 5% increases or they may not relate. I'm going off what I saw for averages for the last 3 years. So when you look at our budget, we have the last 3 years of or the last 2 years, and then what we're proposing for 2022. We're basically working off the averages of what we see for increases there. So there will be a small increase there with personnel costs. Going down below into our non-labor, we have a small increase here, and I think it mostly had to do with fleet rental. Just because the trucks that we rent every year, that price can fluctuate. That's really set by OMB as to what the fleet rental prices are each year. So we just gave a small increase there in case there was, but that can also be changed. We usually find that out in the beginning of the new year as to what they set the fleet rental rates at there. But for the most part, the rest of the expenses are pretty much where they are. I did bring down fuel a bit in that area, but I did raise office supplies a bit because if we go back to in-person meetings, we'll be buying more printer cartridges and toner, which we didn't have to last year. And actually our office supplies are down for the last 18 months because we didn't actually even buy paper. So we didn't print anything. But now we're back to meetings, we're printing, we're starting to do more office stuff. So I just raised that up there in that aspect. And then, we did increase the contracted services for 2022 with incoming new contractor. Their hourly rates are a bit more than we have paid in the past. So we did raise that by 100,000, but we kept that all the same as proposed for 22. So yeah, you'll see essentially, less than $1,000 increase there for that. And then going down below, the big bomb, I guess, in this budget would be that I propose going for our annual contribution to our capital account. We've only been doing 25,000 for several years, actually a couple of years there. We just did no contribution. And in the last 2 years, we've done 25. I went to 100,000. And the thinking behind that is that we've taken a big ding out of our capital account for roads with the repave of Alberg. So we did a big project there, and we need to start replenishing that account for the next big project that's going to come up, preparing ourselves for there. We don't have the ability, we do have the ability to bond, but we can never get bonds to pass for Girdwood, just because we have to get a favorable vote in Girdwood and Anchorage to pass. And for some reason, we can't get through Anchorage, even though it's clearly written in the bond initiatives that they do not pay anything for it. We just need their backing to use the bond ratings. So we've been doing this annual contribution to capital. We do it on the park side. We do it in the fire department side. And that's one thing I actually have to look at with the fire department, if there was a capital contribution in there. We need to go back to that later on, but I do think that an increase to 75,000, bringing it to 100,000 is something for us to consider there to start building that reserve back up again going forward. So that would bring up our direct costs there just under $75,000 more for the budget in that aspect. The small increases for personnel and the smaller increase there for non-labor. So, and then below, especially for those new to the board, this is what's called IGCs, intergovernment charges. And so this is what other departments in the government charge us to give us services. And so one would be, we get charged each time we submit cash receipts. And so it's $43. So there's an accountant at the accounts payable downtown, and they have a service charge that they give us there. Most of the time, hopefully that's a wash with the revenue coming in from this room. We apply it to this account. They keep a separate tally on it. And so that's a fee we pay out of there. The next one is the resource management administration. Basically, they are the accountants and an individual named Maury Robinson in Public Works that works closely with me to support me there. So we pay for their time to help administrate things for Girdwood service area. And so that's been at $55,000 as long as I've been here to do that. I've never seen that actually change at all in that aspect. And then SAP capital recovery, this is where we're paying back on the SAP accounting system, which was well documented in the press at the beginning of the Berkowitz and the end of the Sullivan administration, how expensive it was for the city to bring that on. And then there's an SAP support center. So we pay a fee for the ability to call the support center and work out our problems we're having with SAP. We use GIS now, which is actually a huge tool for me. So we use that a lot for all our mapping needs. I just got done doing all our storm drainage systems for Girdwood, mapping that. So we pay a licensing fee there. And then we have general liability in that aspect. That went down significantly last year compared to the year before. And then we pay a workers' compensation for Margaret and I out of that IGC. So you can see there our IGCs total up just to almost $70,000.
Are these folks keeping their time and billing you, or does it always just come out as 55?
No, it just comes out of sums. So they basically just make a calculation and then they pull that out at some point. Usually what it comes out is in 2 drops. They do, like for the management administration, it comes out at 6 months and then 12 months.
Are lawyers included in the resource management?
Lawyers? Well, I never say anything about this, but we've had several requests for lawyer reviews and things like that. We've never got charged. And usually what happens is that you'll get once you put a request in, then you get a charge, but Girdwood's never ever gotten charged. And like, for example, when we did all the police work, we had a dedicated lawyer for months on that, and we never saw a charge for it. So I never question it, I never ask. So it may be part of this, who knows, but it doesn't. I think what they do is they charge to the public works in the larger part, and probably maybe part of our management administration goes to that too. So this is kind of overrun. So we would be looking at, an $81,000 increase. And right now I'm estimating based on 2020 assessments. Now keep in mind when the mill rate comes out, the final mill rate would be based on our final rates will be based on 2022 assessments will be, 2.04 mils. So that those assessments will change as we get closer to actual tax time. So that look like that in that aspect for public works or roads.
Unfortunately, the mill rates will go down when we look at next year's numbers.
Yes.
Because the assessments go up, and although ours go
Correct.
down to compensate, school district doesn't.
Correct.
It means more money.
Yep. So every year I give an estimate of what we think the mill rate's going to be, and historically the mill rate has always come in lower, actually significantly lower than the calculations that I come up with. And part of that is that sometimes we have excess revenue that we collect, and what they do is they'll offset our mill rate and lower it. And there's some credits that we receive or things like that. There's things that happen at OMB that it's above my pay grade as to what they do. But historically, our mill rate has always come in less than I estimate, because if I take the formula and add all of our operating expenses up, usually I'm about a half a mil higher than they are at times. So last year, I think I had us at 5.58 mils, and we came in at 5.08 for this year, whatever it may be. But also, like Mike said, our assessments went way up this year, and so that helped to lower it.
Just the contractual services, is that one contract?
That's Western.
Okay, that's Western.
Yeah.
And the road improvement account,
Yes.
that's just something, do you anticipate 100,000, or that'll roll over every year and we need to do another auger?
It'll roll in. So, and I'll show you later on, we have contributions and we build them. And then we finally get to the point where like, okay, we can do this project. Like the next big one I'm going to see is Girdwood Place asphalt that needs to be replaced. It's peeling apart every day, and we're doing patches over there. It's just aging out. So at some point we'll have to go in there and grind that up, repave that area. So that will be a large capital project. We need to deal with the bike paths going to the hotel and to the school. So that will be another capital project. So a lot of where our expenses are in that area. And then we have three large drainage projects that need to be addressed. Three fish culverts on Lower Glacier Creek. I'm hoping we can do that out of my operating budget next year, but we may need to use capital dollars to get it done. But they need to be fish passages at all three of those and built larger than they are. They're 1998 culverts that were put in quickly after the flood that happened in 98, where we had the cyclone come and sit over Alyeska, and it actually had blown out the previous culverts. So those, if you go down Mount Hood right now, you'll notice one culvert is actually completely jacked up, and it's like a speed bump going over it, and it's totally shifted. So we actually have design on them, and at the next meeting, I'll be presenting a proposal to finish those designs and get them stamped. They're at 95% right now, and I work with Western. They have the expertise, equipment, and knowledge to actually replace those. With our old contractor, Cooley, I couldn't do it with them. They were good at driveway culverts and cleaning out ditches and things like that. These guys are much more experienced. So I think I can start replacing those culverts through our operating budget each year, through our summer work, but we may need to use some capital dollars. So what we do, back to your question, we do put the contribution in, we just let it build.
Okay.
So we get to a project that we need to do.
Are those culverts big, square culverts with gravel bottoms?
Yes, there'll be box culverts, and then they'll have, as they come out, if you go down Mount Hood, the problem we have there is that a long time ago, that was used as a gravel resource area, and they got dug out really wide. So when all that rock comes down Alyeska Creek, it gets that culvert and it fans out. And then what it does is it creates a big rock bar, sandbar right in the middle, and it diverts the water right towards the house over there. And so every other year, I get a permit from Fish and Game. We go in there and we dig it out. And it's because what's happened is it's so wide there, the water slows, it drops the gravel, it makes it build up, and then it starts eroding away at the banks of the houses over there. So what we want to do is go back in, put in a good fish habitat, and what they'll do is they'll put the box culvert in, and then downstream of it, they're going to put tree trunks at the base, and then that'll be good habitat, which then will channel the water the direction it should go. When they put the culvert back in, they actually put it in the wrong direction, and they pointed the house. It didn't actually go with the flow of the creek. So there's a lot of changes that need to be corrected down there.
So my recollection was they were up, it was about 700,000 for the Alaska.
700,000 to 800,000, and that was 5 years ago.
5 years ago, so we're talking about, 300,000 a year.
Yeah, maybe, yes, yeah, it may be 300,000 a year. It just depends, like having a contractor who's here and established and they're doing summer work for us already. Sometimes you can work a better deal with that aspect. But yeah, we would be looking at that about 300,000 a year. So we would definitely be using a good sum of our summer operations. Usually summer operations will have about 400,000 available. So I'm hoping that we can just use our operating budget this year to do that and then put that money towards bypass and paved roads.
Right.
Those are in the Annapolis Water Catalog, is what have been for years.
Yeah, they have been for years. And Will Frost at Fishing Game he's already reviewed the plans, and he's retired now. We have to go through another review, but yeah, they're totally supportive of us redoing those. So. Actually, the second culvert is preventing fish from getting upstream, so they'd like to see it improved.
Cool, thanks.
Yep. Any other questions with roads?
I guess I kind of have a question about that increase. Did you have specific, kind of where did the 75,000 increase come from? Is that you're thinking like you're trying to build up to X dollar or?
Well, my goal, and I'll talk about this in our capital portion, I think Girdwood could always have $1 million savings account. Because someday we're going to see that 1996 flood come back through, and it's going to wash out our major infrastructure. And I think it'd be good if Girdwood is established in that aspect. Now that's a high goal. But I do think if anything, we should build up towards 500,000 to 600,000 so that we can tackle large projects and bring them down. Because along the way, we're going to have 1 year and we got to deal with this road. So that's 250,000 out. Now we're back down to 250, and who knows what's going to happen next year. So it's just what's happened is the service area has improved for the last 10 years. Town Square, this road, Olympic Mountain Loop. We put these storm drain systems in. They installed it with metal culverts. Eventually, those things are going to fail over time. And you can look at Anchorage right now as their storm system is failing, and they have no money to deal with it, and they don't know what to do for the future. They can't bond for it, so they're looking at a service area just for storm drain. And that becomes a bond or a mill rate of its own. And for Girdwood, I think for us, if we're proactive to get ahead on saving, we can tackle these things as they come instead of us letting the problem get deferred and then we just can't catch up. So
Right, and then having to deal with bonding. I'm going to get that part.
Correct.
I get that part. I was just wondering if there was kind of a specific, and it sounds like there is number goal.
Yeah, so when we get to the capital projects, I'll show you a number of projects that we need that's been on our list for a long time that we're trying to work through. And I've given rough estimations on what I think the cost estimates are. So yeah. Okay. Move on to Parks and Rec.
We should just check on Teams. Anything from Teams?
Anybody from Brianna or Amanda?
No, thank you though. Those are great questions and great clarification, Kyle.
Okay.
Can you still hear us, Amanda?
I don't see Amanda. User.
She's on my screen.
Oh, I see her.
Yeah.
I think she's just muted. Okay. Okay. I'll move on to Parks and Rec. Sorry, this is a little bit larger budget because we really spaced things out in this one. But I'll start with labor. And so the expenses you see here are for our 2 seasonal employees that we have right now. They are union employees, and so they're part of Labor 71. So we are set with their wages. And this increase you see here with them would be representative of their, if they were to both return next year. So they would probably be looking at a 1.5 increase if they did return next year. And I kept the other things. They do get a benefit of annual leave, so they do earn vacation while they're here with us. And then we do pay the unemployment and medical care taxes, things like that for this out of there. So that would be the increase there of that.
It's more like a 15% increase, I think,
Yeah.
or 1.5.
So, and then going into the non-labor, so we have operating supplies, and every year we have sort of a set amount set for different areas. Now, it doesn't mean we're always going to spend it. My goal every year with every budget is to have a surplus, just so that, you know, we are being efficient as possible, but we also have accounts set up for our different things. And one would be campsite maintenance. You know, I have a small increase there just because we're always dealing with things over there with the campsites. Actually, the campground is getting more use this year than we've ever seen it. We have these sort of like youth groups that are coming through constantly. So we're always trying to improve those sites over there. I was trying to be more detailed on different things that we spend on, and trash bags and mutt mitts, the dog bags. Those have been a recurring expense for us every year, and they're getting more and more use. Our garbage cans are overflowing this last weekend, so it is always something that we're always dealing with. Park improvements, and this is just general. Every year we do paint, we do gravel, we do hardware fixes, power wash, all these different things. Sometimes we do bring in a commercial power washer to help us with courts or skate park in that aspect. We have the skate park. We always have money for rebuilding ramps there. The skate park, half of the park is wood, so we're always maintaining it to keep it in shape. I significantly decreased the hand tram this year. I only left $500 in there in case we have to do any general maintenance to keep the terminal safe. If we had to apply more wood, or we had to put up some more safety barriers because it's getting you know, misused. We will be this year flying out the hand tram. I do hope Alpine Air will still give us a donation to fly it out, but we do have its funding this year. We have to pay for them to fly it out, but we will be removing the cart at some point in the fall just to get it out and have it not as attractive item out there. So, but at this point in time, we see that decreasing funding there. The ball field, we have been on a pretty steady program of having the field professionally aerated, reseeded, and then general repairs. We'll definitely probably be buying infield dirt again. We get it every year. There's only one person who has infield dirt for baseball, and that's up in Palmer. So they truck it down each spring to us, and we reline the infield out there. We just did a big fence replacement project on the outfield fence. So we have a new fence out there. So that's taken care of. I do have a group that's really interested in building a batting cage. I've asked them to do the legwork on figuring out what they want and how much it's going to be. And so we may bring that forward at some point. It sounds like they also want to try to fundraise as much as possible for it. So we'll see where that goes. Every year we have tree removal. We have an arborist that comes in and look at trees for us to mitigate any hazardous trees. Especially with these cottonwoods, they're getting mature cottonwoods out there. So we look at trees. Sometimes we actually don't take down the tree, but we go up and we cut all the dead stock out of it, especially over the playground area, just to make sure nothing that we can see will fall on anybody. So we always have tree work done. And then disc golf. What we are doing now is we're renting this, what's called a walk behind weed whacker. Basically, it's this hedgehog. And we just go and we cut all the grass and fairways. And we leave the roughs tall, but we leave the fairways open. The disc golf is one of the more popular activities that we have here. Now people are playing year round out there. So we're definitely trying to put investment back into it. And we're also working with the Eagle Scout, who's going to do his Eagle Scout project out there and put up signs at every hole that gives you the direction of where the hole goes, what par it is. And then there'll be 2 signs at the first 9 and the back 9 of the disc golf that shows the whole course. And so we'll be helping to sponsor them with doing the signs, but they're going to do all the installation for us. next spring. And then we have trail materials. We're working with Trails Committee on improving our trail signage. If you've been to the Lower Iditarod, the Beaver Pond, you can see the signage work we've been doing down there. And we would use this 5,000 to purchase materials and then also leverage it against grants that we could get for improving our signs, so we could improve more signs around the valley on the trail systems out there. And then 5,000 for grooming maintenance. We have an older machine now, as by when it hits 6 or 7 years old, that's considered an older machine, and we're starting to see parts break. I actually have a drive clutch right now in my office that I'm trying to find. Parts right now are almost impossible to find for snow machines, just because the part supply line has got so disrupted during COVID. So we're constantly, but we had a lot of breakdowns this year. We were dealing with a lot of maintenance on the grooming machines. When it's a good winter like that, we run those machines hard and things break. So we try to keep up with it. And then we have sort of an annual cost for screws, drills, hand saws, things like that, miscellaneous tools that we either break or need for projects that we're doing. And then for soccer field, we have the reseed project out there. So aerate and reseed 50,000 square feet out there, and also doing brushing around the field, and then always dealing with like soccer nets and things like that. So that's where we have the 5,000 in there. Fuel, I'm keeping it pretty much the same. Fuel sort of just averaged, just below 3,000 for several years. So I think we can keep it in that area. If we need more for fuel, then we'll just look at other areas to reduce for the year. And then playground improvements. We're still working through our improvements to the playground related to inspection we had by Leather and Associates a few years ago. So the next big thing that we probably should do is bring in a professional painter to stain it. Just because when we tackle this ourselves, it's a pretty big task. And so bringing somebody in who has sprayers and they can tape things off and get it done in quicker time so the playground is not shut down for very long, I think is the way to go. So we'll be looking at that here. And then beautification for our flowers and our different beautification projects. We always have a little budget for soil, fertilizer, stakes, gloves, for volunteers, things like that. So. And then we're moving into repair and maintenance contract. We always have window cleanings that are done each year for this facility and the library. And then we also have a turf and trash contract. We get all our mowings done for $6,000, which, to be honest, is a ridiculously low price. We don't know how the guy does it. And he does do some seeding and fertilizing, but we've kind of just had him focus on mowing. Because he's not so good with the seeding and fertilizing, and we've used this other contractor for the seeding and fertilizing. So if he can get the mowing done, we're happy with that. So he seems to do that, even though it takes Margaret probably about a half hour on each phone call to get through it.
Yeah, they're hidden costs.
Yes, they're hidden costs. And then we have insurance for and supplies, supplies for volunteer efforts. So sometimes we'll have volunteer efforts and there'll be hats and gloves, safety glasses, things like that for different events that we do. And then a large portion of our budget is also the nonprofit grants. So you'll see here there are 25,000 that we do in hard funding for Fort Valleys. Fort Valleys really provides all the recreation programs that you would see Parks and Rec doing in town. Fort Valleys does it for us down here, and I think it's a great program. They do soccer, they do all those field camps, all those things. And Anchorage Park and Recs would provide those, but down here Fort Valleys does that. And then the other 35,000 goes to the annual amount for the split between those who apply for nonprofit grants. So you can see it there. We just wrote in here the total amount requested in 2021 was 39,000, but we only gave out 35,000 that year. So, and then we would fill in the different grantees. I just left that in there as to show you what we do. Once the grantees are given their amounts, then we fill it in to show what the breakdown is. And who knows, we may have new grantees this year. And we have $1,000 for advertising. We take out an ad and milepost for our campground. We do ads in the, God, what's the name of it? Chamber. And we do some other grant ads and signs and things like that for Parks and Rec. And then we have other contracted services. We have our porta potties. I did increase that to 9,000 because we've had requests for more porta potties. And we did install a porta potty over this year at Town Square and out at the 5K. And we may need to add another one. We just had an issue last weekend where by Sunday the porta potty was full. It was fairly disgusting, but they won't come till Tuesday. And so we may need to add a third one at times when there's a lot of demand. And then we have invasive weed work. So we've had Tim Stoller come and present. And so you can see the part of the money that we donate towards invasive weed work here, which is $5,000 for the valley. And they also receive funding, I think, from the U.S. Forest Service and DOT too. And right now, I've decreased this, but right now we're still requesting for 4 weeks of trail work with SCA to come in, 2 weeks. And it would be a crew of 6, and then they come in and they actually help us do some heavy lifting projects, maybe trail tread, side bank cutout work, things like that, where we can put them on it. Like our guys, when they do trail work, they may get a day or a day and a half of solid trail work, but then they have to do like watering plants, pulling garbage, fixing equipment. So they work 4/10s, so they may not have a dedicated time to really get out there, start a trail project, and then complete it in a good amount of time. So we usually have a SCA crew come in and help us knock out some solid trail work. Student Conservation Association. So they're all college students, sometimes high school crews, and they're led by a crew professional, and they come in and they do all kinds. We've had them on several projects. They did a lot of work on Beaver Pond. They did the first portion of the Lower Iditarod to the creek there. They did all that work through there with Andy Henlin. So. And then the sort of the operational aspects, the public utilities, this is where it falls in, that pays for the Glacier City Hall over there, and then part of our, well, most of it over there, and then our dumpsters, and then Chugach, and things like that. So, and then we have insurance for volunteers. So that kind of makes up all of our non-labor there, that aspect. Actually, this year, the way we're working things, non-labor does come in less than last year with a decrease for SCA in that area. And then once again, we're just requesting the same contribution to capital for parks. And so that would be 150,000 to parks in that aspect.
Does that include the roof fund for here, this room?
It does not. It does not, but part of that money could be put in. Right now we have 75,000 reserved for this room, but we could, if you wanted to, you can make a portion of that money go to that area. Overall, our total non-labor is at $318,678, which is down from the $321,500 last year. And then below is the IGCs that we pay out of parks. So overall, our budget that we're requesting for this year would be flat to last year, 424,974. Oh, I do actually have 10 more cents in there. I can get rid of that. I don't know why I would have 10 cents in there. It must be one somewhere instead of a 0.
Just 53K for your facilities in IGC?
Yes. So we have, the MOA has its own facilities department. And so they come down and they do all the repairs. And so for the most part, that is for this entire building to have those guys on call and come down and do repairs. So like today they were down and there are several leaks on the glycol system. So they're in here surveying what they have, and then they'll come back down and spend probably a week here repairing all the glycol system, that aspect. So everything is covered by the MOA when we have repairs. So every time I call repair in, there's usually a guy here the next day or two who comes down and fix stuff. Yeah. There. So yeah, that is, but based on that, you know, Parks is one of our lower mill rates for the service area.
I wanted just a comment.
Sure.
I really think the new porta potty locations and increase in the porta potties is great. So thank you for doing that.
Yes, and thank you to Brianna for suggesting those locations. Yeah, they worked out nicely.
Thanks,
Except we've had to chase off a few campers who've set up camp there in Town Square, and the porta potty became their John, and Whittier Police has been helpful with that. They were sitting there for weeks, so it became a little issue where they're setting up tables and tarps and things like that. So
Wow. Well, thank you, Kyle, for staying on that too. And police.
Yeah, the Volvo extension has been really, seems to be quite popular, isn't it?
Yeah. Good. If not, I'll keep moving on here. Okay, cemetery is pretty easy because I don't have a budget, so we're
Any cost at all? We're not expecting any cost.
No costs at all at this point. If the way parks or cemetery right now is that if it moves forward, it's going to be a capital expense.
Yeah.
And so it would come out of capital funding. There's no operational expenses right now because we aren't anywhere near going to bond. Bond has been deferred to maybe 2022. But it really depends on what the administration is going to be like with this type of project and what Eagle River and how this is all going to play out. So at this point, we have no cemetery budget to report or request.
And then operations after that would be area-wide.
It would become an area-wide expense because that's the way cemeteries right now, they're part of the area-wide budget.
I think there was a small expense for like plowing and, you know, clearing parking lot. We were just, we had a cemetery meeting last week and Tommy was mentioning that and I was like, oh, I kind of remember us talking about that.
Yeah, but that probably would get sucked up into our road budget anyways, because we're clearing parking lots around here that are within the parks, but the roads budget
That
goes.
would be just a minor increase over there.
Yeah.
Could we just back up 1 second?
Sure.
You were talking a little faster than I
No problem.
So were you saying by operating supplies and campground and maintenance supplies, you're just, there is clearly an increase there, but you're also saying you're breaking things out differently. So it's not like all of a sudden you're buying trash bags that we never bought before.
No.
You're just breaking things out.
I'm trying to show it better as to what we're spending our money on in that aspect. And trash and mud mitts are a given that we're gonna buy that.
I assume, so,
Yeah.
yeah, it's not that they suddenly appeared one year and they didn't
No.
exist the other year.
No.
And then with winter grooming equipment, I didn't catch what you said there. Is that, like, we're not keeping up with the maintenance on our stuff there, or?
Our equipment's starting to age out, so we're buying more parts to keep it going. And we looked at proposing to buy a new snow machine this year, and we called in March, and they said, we'll put you on a wait list, and they called us 2 weeks later and said, we will not have any machines available until 2023.
2023.
Yes, because their supply line is so limited, they can't produce. So they sold all their machines for 2022 by March of 2021. And so they said, they said, we'll keep you on the list. And for some reason, there's a miracle in the supply chain and we start getting all these parts and we can start producing machines, then we'll call you. But as of right now. So I am just showing, because what happens is that what really sucks up our time on snow machines is the labor aspect, because we pull these machines to town. We try to do as much work as we can. And we have this great volunteer named Shane Bolin, and he actually even took a machine fully apart and replaced the fuel pump in it. And that probably saved us almost $1,200 in labor. But there's times where he's like, I cannot figure this out. Like, this is a wiring harness issue. And this year we had to replace the wiring harness issue. That almost cost us $2,500 just replacing the wiring harness on it to get it running. The machine was perfectly good, but the wiring harness melted in the middle, and something happened, a wire got worn and it just sparked. But anyways, it's just when we have to take it in and take it to the shop, we pay a lot in labor to get things done. So that's what we're looking at with these older machines. So
Okay. And then just one other question, I linked mentally at the part where you were talking about, is there any particular reason, or you're just thinking to spend less on the trails when you're coming down to 2 weeks of work instead of?
Correct. Yeah, and I've seen that my expenses grow in other areas, so with what we're seeing with what we can do with our seasonal labor now, I think we can decrease our dependency on SCA crews to help us with our trail work. So if I can put more work on trails into our seasonal labor, then that allows me to help cover things that I'm seeing more of in our operating.
Okay. I'm just curious.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's partly because we typically had more staff the last couple of years. We used to have one person.
Correct. We used to actually have a 0.5 a person.
Yeah.
We only worked half time, and then we went to a full-time person. Now we've gone to 2 full-time persons. So, yeah.
That'll be an annual decrease.
Well, and I've thought about going to 3 people, but I'm actually really liking this 2-person system because 3 people all of a sudden puts another person in the truck. And then is there enough work for 3 people to do? Because sometimes it's a 2-person job. And so I'm really liking staying with this 2-person seasonal employees that we have, and then bringing an SCA crew in, and then we just knock out a ton of work at once. Instead of having somebody, the 3rd person on, because sometimes there's projects where it only takes 1 person, so I assign the other person, and then I'll have a 3rd person, and like, what do I do with this person? So right now, I like that level. So I think we'll see how it goes next year with the SCA, but I like to stay at that level.
Yeah, these aren't easy positions for us to fill either. Like, you would think that people would see the job opportunity. I don't know, 10 applications, but it's not like that.
For the season.
Yeah. And this year's a phenomenal, this is a crazy year in hiring anyways.
Right.
So it's just really,
We're really lucky to.
we're real lucky to get the 2 people we had, because the rest of them that came in weren't very well qualified. Okay. I'll move on to police unless there's any questions. The budgets get easier. Okay. Police. Well, it's a pretty straightforward budget. We have a contract to Whittier. Right now, I am showing no increase. The increase is set by the Consumer Price Index, so the CPI each year, which we usually find out in January or early February as to what the CPI increase is. So between 20 and 21, there was no increase in CPI. So the budget stayed exactly the same. Now, if the CPI was to decrease, that doesn't mean the contract goes down. Contract stays at the amount it was originally started at, and then if there's a decrease, it just stays what it was the year before. So, so right now, I'm showing that Whittier's police contracts can be the same for next year, but that may not be the case. It could go up, 1 or 2 or 3%, depending on what the CPI is for next year. We have the rental of the substation, which is part of the ACS building over there across from Sheriff 5, so that's $6,000. And then we have this fund here for car towing and miscellaneous police items. It should be miscellaneous public safety items. We talked about the printing for the domestic violence posters yesterday at GBUS. That's where that money's going to come out of, is that line right there. That's what we pay for towing cars. At New Year's, we had an impound yard, and so we paid for the fence rental and to the towing company to have a towing rig down here and all that. So that's where that all works there.
They improved their building over there so they can spend the night. Is that where this comes out of too?
Yes, so that's all been paid out. We paid out in the first 3 years of that first contract with them. So the substation was actually used to be $12,000 a year, and now it's $6,000. So we've paid off those improvements. But they do stay nights over there occasionally, and then they have a substation that they can go in there and they can run a breathalyzer on people. They have places to do the reports, things like that. So yeah, and then there's small IGCs associated with them, mostly purchasing services and some accounts payable related to it, but only $415 this year for that IGC. So not much of increase that aspect. So please.
I think we're lucky that we're doing that calculation using the January numbers. It's because of the sort of dip last year and then the rise this year, and we never get the advantage of the dip to get the cost of the rise. If we've been doing it in June or July numbers, it's probably about a 6% increase. But because it's January, we're probably going to have something closer to 0.
Yes.
Maybe 2.
Yeah. They've been
probably should budget some increase.
Yeah. And we usually just make that increase change with our first quarter revision. So what happens is we set the budgets for the new year, and then we take a look at the budgets again in the first quarter of the year and see, because at that point, the municipality has closed out their books for the previous fiscal year. And then I can really see like, we have a lot of expense in this area. We may need to raise this up a bit. And so we can make adjustments. And for the most part, with the budgets I manage, we haven't really done many changes except with police. If we saw CPI increase, then we would make the change. So we had enough money to finish out the year in that aspect. So, and the way we do it is we do monthly payments. At the end of each month, we make a payment to Whittier for the services provided.
I've ever seen the budget stay the same like that year after year after year.
It's in the deal we have with Whittier Police is a pretty good deal. Yeah. We hope it continues. We'll be going into year 3 here. Yeah, we'll be starting year 3 in 2022.
Just out of curiosity, in 2017 or 18, what was it?
I think it was 725, 625 was our first budget, first contract. 675. 3 years later, like, okay, let's sign up. But it was. Yes. But what really was it, the police chief at the time, Robert Beatty, he saw the value in having Girdwood as part of the Whittier Police Department and the revenue that they received, but also the recruitment aspect for officers. Officers saw that they could work both communities and they would actually get to do real police work year round. Whereas when they're in Whittier, there's not a ton of real police work. It's more dealing with domestic issues over there, and it's very quiet in the winter. And over here, when we have a winter crowd, they're very busy dealing with the ski crowd, the party crowd.
Quiet.
And so officers are actually staying with them. And one of the, there's actually, most of the officers have been there at least 4 or 5 years. Like Mark Hager's been there ever since the very beginning. It's good to have that retention, especially when they're good officers like they are. So.
Yeah, and prior to that, they had the same kind of rotation issues that Michelle discussed.
Correct. Like
Well, they used to lay people off in the winter. So it was just, they had, I think, about 2 starting to. Because, all you have to do is stand by the door.
Go up the elevator.
Build it down.
So yeah, that's the police contract. Any questions with that? Online, any questions? You guys okay? You there?
Looks good. Sounds good. Thank you.
The capital. This is where we get into the capital projects. And this is kind of a running list of projects. This is the first time I've actually included it with the annual budget. We've done this separately, but I think it's a good time to add it all together so you can think about, with those contributions that we talk about, where those monies could go to. So the first area is sort of capital projects related to parks. I keep this on there. I have no idea where this is going. I've kind of stepped back from this. We had a big push on it at one point in time with the bond, and then Little Bears board wanted to kind of go their own direction, but I still have Little Bears building replacement on there. Estimated cost $2 million. At this point in time, I have no status update. It's pending in my view. I haven't heard anything from Little Bears or where they're going with it. But at this time, we do know that they're in their existing facility and it needs a replacement. So I keep that on there as just something that has been in our mirror at one point in time, and it still is. So
I think the general status is once they started thinking about significant increase in size and a bigger facility, I think it's hard to go back to a 10 or 20% increase in size.
Correct. Correct. And so when they look at that significant increase in size, they're looking at parcels that aren't within Parks and Rec or really aren't within the GBSA area, you know, ability to build it. So
they're also looking at budget 5 or 6 million.
Correct. So we don't know where they're going. I want to keep some projects on here to show that we did complete them. The pedestrian crosswalk, we did complete. That was actually ended up being a win-win for the community. We ended up getting a safe crosswalk in, and we got the whole thing reimbursed. So we got all the money back from the state. The state came in after we had completed the project and said, hey, we still have money left over from the Alyeska highway improvements. How about we reimburse your crosswalk? So they reimbursed us to the tune of $238,000. So that has landed back into our Parks and Rec budget within our capital funds. I have in here, and I have this sort of stepped out, and this is going to become more clear here, but I had an engineer design build package for the Glacier Creek, and I had that in there for $1 to $200,000. And that would just be creating a bid package that we could put out the bid, and also would have solid cost estimates as to how much the bridge would cost to build. I meant to put that as 2021. When I wrote this capital list up, this is before I knew of the news from the administration that they are looking to give us $525,000 to go towards the bridge. At this point in time, I was thinking that we're going to probably partner with U.S. Forest Service to get the money from the Great American Outdoor Act to fund this. This definitely is going to change depending on the news that comes out of the administration and how this all plays out with the funding that comes in. And then I'm definitely on the high end here, but to build a bridge over Glacier Creek on the Winter Creek Trail, I had between 1 to 1.2 million. I do think it's somewhere in the 1 million range, but I do think that includes the design work, like I say above here, just because I'm sure that as this goes into design and we really want a good solid bridge out there, there's not going to be something that we're going to have to be dealing with in, a short 10 years, that it could be up in the $1 million range. So I just want to, and I don't want us, and if it comes in lower, well, that's a great surprise for us. But if we estimate lower, it comes in higher, we know how that goes. So I want to kind of have a overestimate about what the costs are for that. One of the things that we've had on our list for a long time, and I do think that we should look at this going into 21, 22, is a master plan for Alyeska Playfield parking lot and court and Conic storage area. This is where the soccer field is. This is the Moose Meadows parking lot. We definitely have a need to come up with a master plan there to improve the parking, to make the soccer field much better. It has a major drainage problem. It takes forever to get ready for soccer season. And that whole area could be structured very better. I do think that would be a nice area for a pocket playground in the sense of a neighborhood playground there. It doesn't need to be a big playground, but it could be a small playground for that neighborhood, or just that area close to the resort that could supplement down here. I think that could be a good place for maybe for a pump track. There's a big demand for a pump track in the town, and we could do something there in that aspect. So I think some planning, a master plan for that area would really help to drive us as to what improvements we want to seek out there. And then the next one down below is the redevelopment of the Alyeska Playfield area. And so anywhere from 800,000 to 1.5 million for improving that area, I think is the next capital project beyond the bridge that the community should be looking at and considering in that aspect. We put on here dog park and trailhead parking down here at the end of this road. We think that'd be a good place for a dog park down there. As you come down to the end of the cul-de-sac, going to the left, the area over there would be pretty good for a dog park. There's some zoning issues that we would have to figure out, but we think we would like to have that, make sure that, see if we can get that included in the Girdwood area plan. So it's recognized as a good area for a potential dog park. We have a major issue with dogs on the playing field and lots of negative encounters between those who are trying to use the field for what it is and those who want to have their dogs running on there. And then the waste that dogs leave or animals, cats out there too. And so we feel like a dedicated dog park is needed here in the valley. And also trailhead for the Lower Iditarod. It's just getting more popular for people to park down there, use the Lower Iditarod, and we need to give a good parking area down there too. And then eventually a master plan for the Girdwood Park. We don't have something like that right now. And so once again, that would be 100,000 to 150K for a master plan for future development and management of the park. Identifying what the park could be for the future. There's lots of people who want a better skate park that's covered, tennis courts that are covered. People want to put exercise equipment within the Forest Fair Park, and we have all these paid paths that go through there. People just want to see a better thing through there. There's going to talk about art walk. There could be permanent art structure through the park, things like that. And we've deferred all those plans until we feel like a good master plan comes out and sort of dictates what the park's going to be. So, and then Lions Club Park, a new pavilion. So Lions Club has talked to us for years about a new pavilion, and we're going to probably come with a proposal to Girdwood Board of Supervisors in the coming months to do a plan set for a pavilion in the park. And what we're hoping to get ourselves set for is grant funding to build the pavilion. The land water conservation grants funding should be coming to the state, and we're hoping that we can get them get a grant to build the pavilion for the park and Lions Club. A nice covered area over there. We just add to the amenities of that park over there and make it more useful, and all types of other for the park. So that's capital improvement there. So that's it for parks. Before I move on, any questions with parks or any of these capital projects?
So first thing is the trails plan may be done by then. There's quite a few projects in the which kind of align with these.
Yeah.
And some don't. So anything in there at all for potential trails. I don't see any.
The Virgin Creek study.
Something, yeah.
Yeah, we could add that in.
Yeah. And my other comment is, I see these distinct master plans for specific parks.
Yes.
We don't have a parks plan. That might be another way to go.
Could be.
Do a plan rather than look at issues here, separately issues here, just do one overarching plan for everything.
Good idea. Yep, put into our sort of dedicated park parcels, a plan system.
Yeah, and that may include also parcels which are not currently parked, which should be.
Correct. Yeah, what I'll do is I can combine those all together and have one park plan that looks at all those areas.
Because the trails plan has drifted into park plan territory quite a lot as well, so it might be good to have particularly some work set up.
Correct. And one thing that we probably do we would not do it through a subcommittee.
Yeah.
We would do it through a consultant, and then we just do the regular process. That's how plans are developed. So yeah, it'd be much more streamlined. Okay, that's good suggestions. All right, I'll move into roads if there's nothing else there. Okay, so we did talk about this earlier, but Fish Patches Culverts at Alyeska Creek and Mount Hood, and Moose Meadows Creek, which is crosses under Lake Tahoe Road. The estimate 5 years ago was somewhere between 700 to 900. I bumped it to 800 to 900 to replace those culverts. But my goal is to accomplish that through our annual maintenance funding from our operating budget for roads. So we may be able to eliminate this from the roads capital needs as time goes on. But until I complete the plans and get a solid project estimate, I won't know that. So So that'll be the first step to get those plans completed and then go the next step to actual construction through that. We still have, and GVOS has approved this, is power to the Girdwood service area industrial lot. We've just been held up by HOB. The problem about the street maintenance lot down in the industrial park is that we're not platted. We're part of a big tract, and it's kind of a meets and bounds lot. Basically, it's like, here's your line, Bob Wolf, here's your line, fire department, here's your line. And we've kind of come up with a mutual agreement between all of us of how we operate around each other. But there's no survey down there. HLB's been working on dividing the parcels up, dividing the tract up through a not a full-fledged survey, but basically almost like a flag survey. And so until we get that resolved, Chugach Power won't come in and put the power in because they only want to put the power in once. And so they want to know where the lot lines are going to be, and then they're going to set the power. What we have going for us is that we actually have a line next to us, a property line, which is with AWU. So when we showed them the location we're going to put it in, they're agreeable to it. But since then, HLB said, well, let us figure it out. Maybe we can put one transformer in and you and Bob Wolf can share it and then cost can be split. And so I've been patient, but I've been really pushing on it because I really want to have power to our bull rail this year. What we've been doing temporarily is we've been having a temporary power station in the middle of another parcel. So the contractor has to park all its equipment over there in the winter, and it's not ideal, and it's not the best location, but we've been doing that for years. And so we're hoping that we can get this resolved. And it sounds like there's some movement afoot there, so we'll see what happens. So.
And the leasees, they pay for their power?
The leasees do pay for the power, but one thing the leasees didn't do is they didn't pay to bring the power to the lot. They have when they did the improvement, so when you go down there, there's the first 5 lots that come off the paved road are platted lots. And so when they improved that road, they brought in all the utilities, which included the stub for sewer, gas, electric, and I think even telecommunication. So that whole right of way has all those stuff to each lot. And so, like, for example, Andy Inlet, he just has to put up a temporary meter post and then run the power and hook it in the transformer, and he's good to go. We don't have that option right now. We have a temporary meter post off a transformer that's not on our lot, and it sits in the middle of sort of this no man's land. And so we want our own transformer, and then we can run things, we can put lights up, we can do everything that a professional road maintenance lot has. So right now it's very sort of disconnected at the way we worked out there. So we've really been pushing hard that we can hopefully get these resolved. So anyways, that's on. Another thing that we have on here is for future planning. I don't know when we'll get to this, but it should be on our radar, is eventually, we use the old fire station that's our only source of warm storage here in the service area. And so, like, for example, in the contract, I purposely asked for a small sander because that small sander can fit in the garage over there. We can keep sand warm so that at any time we have a response, the fire department calls and says, hey, we're at a fire, we need sand. That truck can just roll right out and go spread sand. Otherwise, it could be -10 and we got to start a diesel truck down there that's been plugged in, but it's not warm enough. And so it takes some time to warm it up, and then we got to break up the pile and fill it in. Because we never leave a truck outside loaded with sand because it'll freeze in the truck and we can't get it out. So eventually the service area needs a dedicated indoor garage down at the industrial park to make it work. So I put that on there as a future capital thing. And my goals are, sorry, I just got something big here. My goals with the capital budget my goals with capital improvements is just to make the service area a stronger service area as we go. When I first got here, we had no sort of lot down there. There was like a pile of gravel on AWU's, the contractor parked over here. And in my first 2 years, we built out the whole lot down there. We put in bull rails, we brought in connexes, We built enclosures to put our gravel in, all those things, just to make ourselves more efficient as an operation. And over time, we've gotten much better, but we still have a lot of area to go through. And really, a lot of our constraints is the fact that we're not on a platted lot down there. So we need to, hopefully we can get over those hurdles. HLB gets the funding to finish the phases down there and plat everything out and finish the road and do what we need to do to make the area work. So we'll see what happens. All the repave of Allberg, left it on there because we completed that. So I think that's a big accomplishment for the service area, and it helped us out a lot there. The other thing I would like to do is get a fabric, what they call a coverall system to put over our sand pile. Right now we put tarps over it, and then we take and we put dirt over the edge of those tarps so they don't blow off. But what we do is we buy E-chips. You'll notice in the winter, it's like a gravel. And purposely don't buy sand because the sand clumps and freezes. So we buy these E-chips and then we put in 6% salt, and that keeps the E-chips loose for the most part. But it's also, if the E-chips come out clumpy, most of the time we can just take the bucket, smash it, and it breaks it apart, and then we can put the truck and start sanding. But we spend a lot on keeping them covered. We spend a lot of time paying the contractor to go down there and cover and take snow off the pile so that we can get to the E-chips when we need them. And this would help, this would resolve those issues by putting a coverall dome fabric tent over our sand pile so that we could just drive in, scoop out and drive out. There's no snow to deal with. The chips are taken care of and they're well protected. And it works really nicely. So once again, just making our operation efficient there. I have an estimate for 300K. I actually think it might be a bit more, but it's within that range to tackle that. And then here's where I say this at this last point here, building a general savings. You know, my dream would be that we always have $1 million available, and then we can tackle projects and knock them out without really having to think about it for the next 3 years of how we're going to save up to get there. And then we just get ongoing. We keep money coming into that fund and tackling things. But I think, you know, at least 500,000 that we're continuing to maintain as our capital accounts that we can tackle, knock things out as we move forward.
That's what is it right now?
I'll show you here in a second. And fire. So she listed some things here. I need to add, I didn't see those requests until tonight, but I'll need to add them into this sheet. But there's a couple things. Engine 41 is the biggest capital purchase that they're working through right now. They're trying to get a cost estimate, but you know, I've kind of given the thing of 900,000. We're looking at the way to finance that is using the fire department's capital reserve fund, and then also taking out a loan. The city has the ability to get loans at fairly cheap interest rates, and paying it back on 5 to 7 years to pay off that engine 41. So it would be similar to taking out a bond, but we would get interest rates that are lower than bonds to pay it off. So we're waiting for Girdwood Fire to get the estimate together from the engine provider, which is most likely Pierce Engines. They provide the apparatus. And once we get that, then we can get all the financials together and come back to GBUS to show what it's going to cost and how we're going to get the money, and then seek your approval to fund that. I think that's the #1 priority right now for a capital purchase, and also hose replacement. You can see the hose replacement here for 30K to 32K. And that is going to be seeked here in 2021. And then beyond that are the other things that she listed tonight. A new snow machine. I told her today, I said, I don't think you're going to be able to get a snow machine this year. You're going to have to figure out what to do. And so they'll be figuring that out. But the other things sound like Utility 41, which Utility 41 is the Suburban you see them drive. That's the first response vehicle. That's the first thing that shows up on any incident. So it gets the most mileage and is starting to age out. So that's going to need replacement the next 2 to 3 years. So that's fire. And police, no capital purchases at this time. So
not even cameras. There's no, the two bonds we've been discussing, well, the one that passed, and the one that we're discussing for the cemetery, I wonder if they should.
Yeah, I could write in the,
Yes, there's a Rescue 41 that we got approved, and then the potential bond for the cemetery.
correct. So Rescue 41 is a EMS rescue vehicle, so it got approved through an area-wide bond. So actually the whole municipality is paying for that new Rescue 41 that's going to come and be stationed here. So that was actually a big win for us. And then I will put that in here to show that it has been approved, and then I'll put in for the cemetery the potential for an area-wide bond for building the cemetery here. That in there. This right here, this is our current fund balance. So you can see we have certain things that we need to dedicate funds to for our needs. And so of that, we have $1,163,882 of fund balance set aside for the area. And what that is made up of is that we have to put money towards the bond rating. So, you know, Anchorage has the highest bond rating. And so we, as a service area, we have to put $252,000 towards that. We have a capital working reserve. And so for major emergencies, we have money available that we can make liquid real quick to hire contractors if we have flooding. If the bridge is about to wash out, we need to get excavators out in the creek and digging out rock or whatever. We have money that we can go to right away, and that would be that $612,000 that we could pull out in that aspect. Or we had a major repair, you know, like a couple of years ago, we had Echo Ridge blowout, and we had to bring in contractors to fix that, and that money came from that area. And then after that, there is leftover balance, which isn't designated to anything. So this is kind of what I refer to as our savings account, and that's $298,000 there. I always recommend to the board that we usually keep that count around 300,000 for the unknown. That's your rainy day fund, in the sense that something happens and we need to deal with it. You know, it could be a major repair to the fire station. It could be somebody broke down the playground and we need to rebuild the playground. You know, we have those funds there to go tap into right away and take care of it in that aspect. So I usually recommend when we have that money there, we keep it. What I think the last time we drawed money from that account was to give a little bit more breathing room to the building of this building. We needed a little bit more capital reserve for this building over here. And we did a very good job of not touching it. And then that money came back and we realigned that money into Parks and Rec. And we used it for the crosswalk lights. And then we got reimbursed for that. So that money has actually gone and been used for two things and come back, and we still have it available to us. And so right now it sits within the capital accounts there. But usually I always recommend that we keep that around 300,000. That's a good number to have there. Now, other service areas, every year, they look at it and go, what's in our undesignated balance? Because they underfund themselves so much in their operating budget, they try to pull out any money maybe they have left over. And so then they'll go and spend all their undesignated fund balance. And I think it's a bad practice, because then all of a sudden emergency happens and they just don't have money. They're doing a special assessment. Make things work out.
My understanding is it's also not a good idea to make that number too big, because although it's associated with the service area, because it's the undesignated, it's actually available for other parts of the community, like the mayor's office, to potentially grab.
Correct.
So we do not want that to be a very big number.
Yep. So then
that's just what happens.
And then we tuck it in our capital account. They can't touch it yet. So because
it's really not that to be. So for example, this 1 million streets. We would not want it sitting in here. We'd want it in capital.
We want it in capital. Yep. Because the assembly appropriates it and puts it there, and then we can use it for just that. So yeah, that is the undesignated account there, that aspect.
Is the account you wanted to grow a little larger?
No, I would like to grow this capital account.
Capital account.
Like that, and then keep an eye on a designated account. The other thing is that what in our undesignated account is that when we have surpluses in our budget each year, that extra surplus money drops into here. Yep. But what screws up this account sometimes is that if we significantly increase our operating budgets, then our reserve for bond and capital reserve has to go up too, because it works off of what our total expenses are each year for our operating. So if that increases, then we have to increase those areas. And so sometimes you'll see our undesignated account go down, even though we had a surplus year. So because it went up in those other numbers.
Well, just so I'm clear, I don't really understand this undesignated account. That's always there. So the 600, we don't operate, we don't pull out the 600K, it just stays.
612 there?
Yeah.
Yeah, it stays there as a capital reserve. It's an emergency fund. So with that 600K and then the let's say 300,000 down here in the undesignated, I think having 900,000 set away for a major emergency is good. Like we had an earthquake and things got really screwed up around here. We would have a very good rainy day account to help us tackle some major issues real quick. And then we hope FEMA funding comes in from there.
Where did this capital reserve number come from? Is that like a standard percentage of what,
Yeah, it's based off of what our total operating expenses are for all of our departments. So it has to be a certain percentage of what our overall operating expenses are. And then accounting sets that. So that's why I'm saying if our overall operating expenses go up each year, like we pull more taxes to pay for a larger operating budget, then this number needs to go up to match that percentage.
20%.
Is it 20%?
Operating budget is like 306 or something.
I think it is about 20%.
Or no, it's 18%. I remember that. I think it's 18%. But then the 8.25 is one. So yeah, I recall when we started paying employees, that number jumped up quite a bit. That had to be set aside because the total budget went up by
when we did the police.
50,000.
Yep, because that year I requested the undesignated fund balance and I was just like, no, we had 400. I was like, where'd the money go? And they said, well, your operating budget went up, so we had to put more money up in these other categories. So that's why your undesignated went down. Because the undesignated isn't tied to anything, so we can use that money for anything that we would like. We just have to get approval by the assembly to move that money to that area. So it's a two-step process. It's a one-step. Well, it's a two-step. GBOS has to approve it, assembly has to approve it, and then it gets moved. So, but like Mike said, if the mayor had some sort of need for it, they could pull this money and use it for something they need, which it only happened once when they did that, and that was because of a workers' comp issue with the past fire chief over there and at the fire department, and they didn't seek GUS's approval. They just went and took the money out and paid for it. And so there was a big disagreement as to who was supposed to pay for it, but at the time, the city manager said, hey, we're just going to pull money from here and do it. And they didn't have to seek GUS's approval on it. So that's something we watched. I haven't had that problem since. So. Okay, I am just going to quickly show this to you, but I'm going to send it to you so you guys can look at it in more detail. But I just wanted to show you the capital accounts and show you how much is in there. And then we can get you guys home.
Did I miss it?
No, I just finished it today,
Oh.
so I didn't put it in the presentation here.
Date modified. I think just put it in there.
Yeah, what's the day?
Oh, 3 of
Yeah, just.
Okay. For you guys online, let me switch you over here so you can see it. Oh, geez. And keep losing it. Okay. So what I'm showing you right now is the current available amounts within our capital budgets. And so within fire, they have a capital reserve right now at 359,000. The contribution, I think, of 79,000 that currently sits in their operating budget has not been moved to this account. So you could, in concept, add in that 79,000 to this, which would have them up around, 430,000, 300 or 435,000 available money for capital. But I still haven't got the confidence to move that money yet, because every year for the last 3 years in the fourth quarter, we've had this panic where the fire department says we don't have enough money to finish the year. And so we actually haven't moved the money certain years just because it looks like they're going to run out of money and not be able to have enough funding. And right now, we still haven't got total assurance that the money that has been approved for their increase for EMS is actually going to come through this new administration. So we haven't moved that money yet. So at some point we will, and I'm hoping we will. And I told Michelle the goal this year is to move your total contribution over, and that will be the first time in 3 years that we did that. So hopefully that happens. We'll see. The next one here is Parks and Rec, and you'll see we have actually several funds here that we have, and one is the undesignated fund balance, or capital balance right now. So there's an undesignated. We don't have this tied to any capital projects, and we have 523,000 available right now in funds for parks in that aspect. We have. And this isn't right because we built this out, and I need to fix that, but we had 41,000 still remaining in the Girdwood Trails plan, but we've expended most of that money for that plan there. And then we have this reserve here for the Girdwood room. So this room, community room of 74,000, we made that contribution probably 5 years ago. We haven't done one since, and mostly because we were trying to keep budgets flat. So we didn't do that. And then pedestrian flasher. Now this ended up in 2 categories actually. We had reserved 300,000 for this project, and we had a remaining balance of 63,000 for that project when we paid it out. But when it got reimbursed, I think it landed in roads. Oh, no, what it did is it landed back up here. It landed up in this one, in the undesignated capital fund. So that's why that capital fund is at 523, because we got that 238 back in replacement. So we didn't spend as much we had reserved for that project. So we have a total of $701,000 in capital funds available. I do need to make some corrections there on the trails plan. So it'll just be a little bit less than that. And then down in streets, we have 246,000 available. Right now we have 318,000 encumbered for the Allberg repave project. We are going to have some additional expenses on top of that. We did have to do some more paving than we originally planned for as we did field survey and getting ready for the project. We just recognized that some areas needed to be more addressed than they were the previous fall. After our winter maintenance, it made sense to go another 30 feet because there was a huge crack right through the portion that we weren't going to pave. So we did things like that. So we do have some overruns there in that aspect that we have to deal with. But that's typical of a project. So we're figuring that out right now, how to pay for them. So we may see a bit of a decrease there. GBOS did approve up to, I think, 575,000 for that project, but we're nowhere near that. We just have additional work that we had to do with the project to make it complete. We have 16,000 in one undesignated account. We have, right now I show the 71,000 still available for the repave there, which we'll probably use from that fund to help pay that out. And then we have 63,000 still available for road and drainage. So we could use that towards the culverts if we need it for the coming years. I'm hoping we will. We can use it towards other projects. So right now, available, not encumbered, not associated with any projects, we have 398,000 in the roads fund there, that aspect. And then down the cemetery, we didn't, from our pre-development work, we still have $2,300 still available for any future cemetery work. So those are our capital accounts at this point in time. And I'll refine some of those numbers as we move through the work session process. So that is kind of a rundown of all the numbers for the service area at this point in time.
Well, you'll shoot that to us tomorrow.
Yeah, I can send you this one so you guys can look
I
at
can update the meeting packet and send it out in minutes. And then we have a document that we drafted a long time ago about the capital funds too, so we'll see if I can pull that up since there's so many of you who are new and it's kind of a lot to, so I figure more paper will certainly help.
Took me about 2 years to realize the difference between the undesignated fund and the undesignated capital.
Exactly.
Yeah, this one kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we'll have questions between now and next meeting too.
Yeah. And then the other thing is to point out is that we haven't moved the money from our operating, the contributions to capital that are sitting in our operating budgets for 21 right now. We have not moved them either from Parks and Rec or Road yet. But we'll probably do that here through the quarter. So but yeah.
Sign of 2 hours.
Signal. Unless there's other questions, that's all I have for tonight.
Thank you so much, Kyle. My battery's dying.
Oh, gotcha.
Brianna, since you're there, was it easy to hear our comments?
Yes, actually, I couldn't always hear you, Mike, for like how articulating it would be. So I would turn you up on my volume, but I could always hear Kyle probably where he was in the room for the microphone. So I would just, if I knew whoever was going to speak for a while, I would probably turn it up. But pretty great.
Good. Yeah, the mic's coming off up here, so.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Good.
Okay, public comment? Not hearing any. Good.
Thank you. All right, guys, have a good night. Good night, guys.